Today we're talking about my 2025 knitting hits and misses. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, Knee Knits. My name is Amy and here I love to talk about all things knitting, and today we're talking about my 2025 hits and misses. It's the end of another calendar year and I love this time of year because I get to go and look through everything that I made this year, all of my knitting projects, and really reflect on what I loved and didn't love about stuff that I made. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the highlights and the lowlights of my 2025 projects. So I have my little stack of knits that we're going to be talking about today, and we'll dive in with the first best project of 2025. I gotta be honest, picking out my favorite project of 2025 was a little bit difficult, but one knitwear piece that I made earlier this year really stood out to me as something I wanted to highlight as my favorite, and this is my Traveler hoodie. This is a pattern by Andrea Mowry. It is a sport weight pattern that is knit from the bottom up, and it comes in two versions. You can knit it with the hood or without a hood, and it features this really beautiful horizontal rib or stripe pattern with knits and purls, and it has a really nice construction with the boxy body, kind of loose cropped fit. From start to finish, this project really captured my attention. I end up using a yarn from Knit Picks. This is their High Desert Sport yarn. High Desert is a blend of merino and rambouillet. It's completely grown and spun here in the US, and it's a non-superwash wool, so it's got that really nice texture. I had been sent a ball to try in a worsted weight, and then I really enjoyed it, and so I bought this entire sweater quantity for myself in the sport weight. I used 4mm needles for this project and was able to hit gauge of 21.5 stitches per 4 inches. I don't knit a lot of sport weight garments, but I really like the finished fabric of it because it's not too thin where it feels like it's taking forever to make any progress, but it still has enough weight where it's warm and like a substantial sweater. Overall, like, good thumbs up for like the gauge of the pattern and the yarn that I selected. I just really enjoyed knitting with it. It's got a really tight twist and has really beautiful stitch definition, and this color that I use is called Ponderosa Heather, which is a heathery green olive color. There's a decent amount of yarn colors to pick from the High Desert Sport collection, some neutrals, some brights, some heathered, some not heathered, so I was really impressed with the different color options, and I went with this olive because I'd never really knit anything in olive before. Now, constructing this sweater, you do knit it from the bottom up, which I know a lot of people might not really love. I don't really knit bottom up sweaters that often, but I feel like the way that it was constructed was really fun because the bottom up, you were working in pieces that were never too long where you lost interest. You were always excited to get to the next step. This is a cropped body. I knit this to the suggested pattern length, which is pretty cropped for most people. If you talk to others, you might find that a lot of people do extend the body length on the Traveler. I like the crop fit. And then the hood is a whole other beast in a good way. It took me a really long time to knit this hood. It uses over like 100 grams of yarn, at least on mine. Again, it's just one of those constructions that was really fun, piecewise, kind of potato chippy, and it's beautiful. Like, it just looks so professional. The whole sweater and wearing it is so comfortable. I really like this yarn next to skin. It's super soft but sturdy. I've worn this a decent amount of times and the pilling on it is not that bad. I feel like this pilling is what I would expect for the amount of times that I've worn it. So overall, pretty impressed with how the yarn has held up over time. I think you can see a little bit more of the pilling on the underside of the sleeve here. Nothing that a little fabric shaver can't fix. There is something really great about like a throw-on piece of knitwear that you can wear like over t-shirts, over long sleeves, just when you're running out the door to run an errand, or when you're doing something fun like hanging out with friends. I feel like the Traveler hoodie really fits in well to all those different types of events, so it's very versatile. I've worn it a lot this year. This definitely takes the cake as my favorite project of 2025. Another project I really loved this year, so this is still in the best category, is my Sophie Shawl. This is a pattern by Petite Knit that I also finished earlier this year. Now, the Sophie Shawl is kind of like the big sister to Petite Knit Sophie Scarf, and I live in Boston, which is a very cold area, especially in the winter, and it's really nice to have something like a giant piece of knit fabric that you can just bundle yourself in when you're going outside, and the Sophie Shawl has definitely lived up to filling that requirement when I need something warm to wear. It's knit from one end to the other, so you start with a small amount of stitches and you do regular increases with the garter stitch and an I-cord border until you get to wherever you want your halfway point to be of the scarf, and then you do decreases, so you create this beautiful kind of oblong triangle shape. For my Sophie Shawl here, I knit mine with Garn ChiaoGoo, which is a chainette construction of both alpaca and merino fibers in the color Granny, which is kind of a multicolored gray color. So the perfect neutral that matches all of my outdoor winter outfits. And I really loved the chainette construction of this yarn because it's got that beautiful, really fluffy texture that I know would just play really well in this Sophie Shawl. It's not really a hairy yarn. It definitely just has kind of that halo and fuzz to it that is not the most durable, so there is a lot of kind of pilling at the ends, but for something like a shawl, I think that's the perfect application for a soft yarn like this. I would be hesitant to use this kind of yarn in a sweater just because I know that it would be pill city, especially like around underarms and stuff like that, but for something like the shawl, it really worked out well. I knit this on 5.5mm needles, and this yarn is very stretchy and it kind of compresses a bit as you knit it, so I don't have the most drapey fabric. It's a little bit on the stiffer side, but still pretty flexible. I think if I were to knit this again, I would go up to a 6mm needle to give it a little bit more breathing room in the fabric, but I really love how this turned out. I used under 4.5 balls for this Sophie Shawl. I don't know the exact dimensions, but it is long enough where I have all of this hanging around so I can loop it around twice to wear. I can kind of drape it over my shoulders, and there's enough room to tie it into a knot or kind of do that hood conversion that a lot of people are doing now with their shawls. Really nice project that I reach for all the time. I think the combination of a wardrobe staple like a shawl and knitting it in a basic pattern in a basic neutral color, it just makes it something really easy to wear for me. One of my least favorite projects of this year, there always has to be one. You know, I do knit a lot, they can't all be winners, and this here is my Ingrid Sweater, another pattern by Petite Knit. Now, the Ingrid Sweater, I was drawn to it because it's got a lot of fun texture. I really love how it kind of has that very casual, effortless look, but it's like a really intricate looking knit piece. So I feel like the Instagram inspiration photos that I was seeing, it was big, it was oversized, it was cozy, got the long sleeves. This is a worsted weight pattern, and I had some worsted weight yarn in my yarn stash to use for it. So I used Valley Yarns Northampton yarn, which is a 100% Peruvian wool yarn, non-superwash at a worsted weight, whereas the pattern does suggest a DK weight wool held with a lace weight silk mohair. So I just did a single strand of the worsted weight yarn. It's in this beautiful teal color. It's called Ocean Heather. So there's a little bit of heathering going on in the fabric. It leans a little bit more on the green side of blue rather than a bluey blue. Definitely one of my colors that really shows off, you know, my features very well. If you know me, you know I really favor wearing blues. And I didn't really have any problems knitting this. I enjoyed the construction of it. It's a classic top-down drop shoulder. So you start with the back and do some increases. It's all charted, and I believe I knit this on 4.5mm needles, which gave me the gauge of the pattern. In terms of actual knitting construction, it was good. I didn't mind it. Now, when I finished this sweater and put it on for the first time after blocking, that was when I realized I didn't really love this piece. It just sat on my body a little bit more stiffly than I wanted. It didn't have that drape or that kind of effortless look that I was going for when I initially decided to cast on this sweater. I did make some modifications to the sizing by cropping the body and the sleeves, but I didn't do any modifications to the body width. However, I did size down. I tend to be in between extra small and small on petite knit patterns, and for some reason I chose to do an extra small on this when I think I would have benefited from knitting a small. I do think that the body kind of comes in a little bit, even though I did block it. Things like the ribbing and the lattice, they just, I think, have a tighter gauge, or they come in a little bit more than if it was like a regular stockinette pattern, or even compared to like the seed stitch at the top of the sweater. So I think actual dimensions of the sweater wasn't what I wanted. Now, secondly, I think my yarn choice also impacted the fit because I did do a single strand of worsted weight yarn. If you do that in patterns that recommend a strand of lace mohair and a strand of wool or a different type of yarn, you're actually getting a denser fabric than if you did the mohair and the wool. So because this fabric is a lot denser, it has the same gauge, but the density is different. It just sits a little bit stiffer. It doesn't really drape or have that flow. And you can counteract that by modifying your gauge. So I think if I sized up my needle size, maybe to a 5mm or a 5.5mm with the same yarn, I probably would have fixed both of my problems of the body not being wide enough and the fabric not being drapey enough. However, all of this I didn't really know was going to happen until after I finished the sweater. Gauge swatches only tell so much. Even if you make a good size gauge swatch, which, you know, my gauge swatches tend to be like this big, so they could be better, but I think they're good enough. Your gauge swatch will never tell the full story of what your final sweater will be. Your best gauge swatch is your sweater, which I know doesn't make any sense, but I tend to use my finished sweaters to inform my future knitting choices for other sweaters. So I think this is a great example of if I were to knit another worsted weight sweater with this type of yarn at this gauge, I know exactly how the drape and fit goes, and I can use that to know if I want to repeat these choices I made with needle size and yarn, or if I want to change things up a bit. So unfortunately, this Ingrid sweater just did not hit the mark for me in 2025. I wish it did, but that's okay. There's always a few projects that you'll walk away from with some learning lessons of the year. So Ingrid sweater, miss for 2025. This next project is a win for 2025. I loved this tank top, and you're probably not surprised because I feel like I've only heard really good reviews for this mixed rib cami. It's a pattern by Florence Miller. So I knit this over the summer. The mixed rib cami is a top-down boat neck camisole that's knit in fingering weight yarn. I knit mine out of Sorella Yarn's classic sock yarn, which is a 100% superwash merino yarn, fingering weight, in the color Forget Me Not from the Garden collection. It's just this beautiful, bright mid-tone blue, and the mixed rib cami features this alternating rib pattern with some twisted rib and some wide stretches of regular stockinette rib as well. Now this pattern was really fun from start to finish. I knit mine on 3mm needles over the summer, so kind of your classic summer knit. It's a little bit slow growing. I mean, I should say it's definitely slow growing if you're used to knitting stuff at a heavier gauge, but the twisted rib really kept me engaged for the whole time. You do knit the first two panels flat before you join in the round at the underarm. The reason I love this tank top so much is because of the fit. So this is a negative ease tank top, and I knit mine the suggested size based off of my full bust circumference in the pattern. So this is size B, and I just measured it, and it does measure with 6 inches of negative ease compared to my full bust circumference. But I think the reason why this fits so well is because of the ribbing pattern. It just cinches in a little bit where you need it to, but then it also stretches a lot where you need it to. So it's super flexible where you need it to be. And also I think Florence just did a really good job with designing the neckline construction of this as well as the underarm construction. I have a lot of issues with summer tank top patterns where the underarm is just way too deep. It always goes too low, but this was not too deep at all. It definitely covers whatever I need it to cover, which is nice. And the way that the straps are set, like on my shoulders, it usually covers up like a regular bra, so I don't have to wear any special undergarments for this. Even regular sports bras work really well under this tank top. So because it's so easy to wear, I reach for it a lot, and I did wear it a lot this year. And it's also just a really comfortable fabric. This is a 100% superwash merino fabric, which you might think is a little bit hot for the summer. I find it pretty comfortable. It's also something that you can bring into the cooler months like the fall and the winter, because it is still like a wool, like it's just a good fabric to wear. I was really impressed with this pattern. I really enjoyed knitting it from start to finish. Just some details close up. It's got a lot of I-cord edging down at the bottom. I did just finish with a regular bind off, which I think looks really clean. I do usually wear this tucked into my bottom, so you don't really see the bottom hem that often. And I will just show you the side panel shaping, which I think is outlined very clearly in the pattern, you have a lot of flexibility to decrease this large section like as much or as little as you need to, depending on how you want it to fit. So I knew I wanted mine to be close to my waist, so I did decrease all the way out to just the 4 stitches that's in the final rib pattern. But if you need more space or want more space, you don't have to. So I really like that kind of flexibility in the pattern construction. I do have an interest in knitting another one of these. I would love this in a more neutral color, like a cream, so I compare it with other kinds of cardigans or blazers. This bright blue is really beautiful on its own, and this is just a great tank top that I would definitely recommend you knitting if you like the style of it. We're gonna talk about a yarn I didn't really love, and this was a yarn that I didn't really love after I finished knitting with it and I started wearing the finished piece. So I have these socks here. These are the Harriet socks by Summer Lee. They are from the Sock Project book, which I would highly recommend that book as a side note. But the sock pattern itself, I really enjoyed. It's just a regular top-down heel flap and gusset sock with these cute little cables, but mostly stockinette. The yarn that I use for this is Knit Pick Stroll, which is a blend of superwash merino and nylon. And the reason I don't love this yarn is not the knitting experience, but it's just the durability, especially for socks, because Knit Pick Stroll is advertised as a sock yarn. It just pills a lot. I'll show you up close, like the heel. I have not worn these socks very often, but there is just a lot of pilling and fuzziness on the fabric that kind of disturbs the pattern. I think because I knit a stockinette sock, it's a little bit harder to tell that there is a lot of pilling from the friction on the fabric, but if you were to knit a more textured sock, I would be worried that this yarn would quickly kind of blur that pattern because of the fuzziness from wearing it. Now, that being said, I will say the good part about this yarn, it's inexpensive. It comes in a lot of different colors, so if you're looking for like the perfect kind of basic shade, they probably have it, and it's also really soft. And a lot of people love really soft yarn. I mean, who wouldn't want something that's soft? The dilemma of being a knitter is that a soft yarn is oftentimes not durable, and oftentimes a durable yarn is not soft. I'm not saying there's no in-betweens, but that tends to be the trade-off with how yarn works. So this yarn definitely has that really nice hand feel. It just feels really soft and kind of like buttery and kind of velvety, but you know, you're not going to get that long-term durability that you might want with something in a sock, especially at areas like the heel that is constantly rubbing up against your shoe, and same with the toes. I feel like they just look like they're felted, and I haven't even worn these that much in the course of 1 year. So again, this is kind of like personal. I don't know if I would avoid this yarn in the future, but just be cognizant if you are someone who is really averse to pilling and fabrics that like look really worn down really quickly. This one's not going to be your best bet, and definitely not your best bet for a really textured pattern. I feel like if you knit just regular stockinette socks in these and you didn't mind it looking kind of felted over time, they'd probably be okay, but just up to your preference. But that's not a yarn that I really loved wearing in 2025. Now, a yarn that I did love wearing in 2025, and I'm kind of cheating because this project I finished in 2024, but I had to share it in this video because I wore my Pure Gynt Amy sweater so much this year. I had heard good things about Pure Gynt. I'd used it before in a hat, and it was honestly a little bit itchy on my forehead, but once I knit a sweater out of Pure Gynt, I understood the hype. Now, Pure Gynt is a 100% Norwegian wool yarn from Sandnes Garn. It's a heavy DK weight yarn, and the Amy sweater that I'm holding up here is a pattern by Petite Knit. I knit the sweater in the color Cocoa Nibs, which is this beautiful brown color. This Pure Gynt, it's just so nice, and I don't really know how to describe it besides it being a sturdy wool that is just really comfortable. It's not soft, but it's also not scratchy. It's just kind of that perfect like texture with enough heft where you feel like you're wearing a wool sweater. It doesn't feel flimsy. It doesn't feel light and wimpy. It feels heavy and strong in a good way. But it's just something that once you put it on, you're just really happy, or at least I am. And Everyone's tolerances to different wools are really different. There are a lot of people who find pure Gynt to be scratchy. I myself don't find it scratchy where I can't wear it, but if you are used to merino yarns, this is definitely a little bit more textured than a merino yarn. Like, I would not describe this as buttery or velvety. I would just describe it as smooth, but hardy. It's also worn really well. Like, I feel like I wore this sweater at least once a week in any of the cold seasons of this past year. I will show you the pilling at the hemline. I, for some reason, get the most pilling at the hem, where I think it rubs up against my jeans. So this is about 1 year's worth of pilling, which you can see is not that bad. Also something that would be easily cleaned up with a fabric shaver. I really loved knitting with this pure Gynt last year. I really loved the stitch definition. I think the combination of it in this Amy sweater specifically is really gorgeous, and I am dying to knit more sweaters out of pure Gynt. I actually do have a new sweater quantity ready to go. For an Olga sweater, I'm really excited to do this striped between this bright red color and this tutti fruity tweed pure Gynt. It's gonna be really cozy, and I can't wait to cast it on in 2026. One knitting tool that didn't really hit the mark for me this year is something new that I tried. They are the Flexi Flip needles by Addi. I tried these earlier this year. They are a hybrid of a like flexible circular needle and a DPN. My friend actually got these for me for Christmas last year because she really loves them for socks. Now, when I knit socks, I always do magic loop with a 32 or 40-inch circular needle. That's just been my preferred way of knitting socks for a little bit now, and I've never liked knitting with DPNs. I find them too fiddly. It's like hard to get the tensioning right. I just don't really like the juggling of all the needles. So I was a little bit hesitant for how these Flexi Flips would go. The method of knitting with the Flexi Flips is the same as knitting with DPNs, except you only have 2 that are holding your work, and then your third needle is the one that's moving around. I went into these with like an open mind. I was thinking maybe I would be converted to using Flexi Flips over magic loop, but I just didn't really fall in love with them the way that maybe I wanted to, and I knit 1 pair of socks with them. Actually, it was these socks that I knit with them, and I just never returned to them after knitting that 1 pair of socks. I just stuck with my magic loop method. So these were kind of a miss. I don't think that they're a bad product. I do think if you do like DPNs over magic loop, which I know you're out there, you knitters who prefer DPNs over magic loop, I think these are really worth trying because they do kind of eliminate some of the awkwardness that comes with like trying to tension on like stiff DPNs. This flexible point really does make a difference with like the ergonomics and for me just how fiddly it felt. If you like DPNs, give these a try. If you prefer magic loop and you know it, I don't think these will convert you to DPNs or Flexi Flips. These weren't really a hit for me this year, but really cool idea. They do come in all sorts of sizes, not just sock gauge sizes. They might be useful for other small circumference things like sleeves. But that's my experience with the Addi Flexi Flips. The last winner of 2025 is actually a repeat from my 2024 favorites video. I have to give my ChiaoGoo red lace needles another shout out this year. They carried me through all of my projects in 2025, and I cannot recommend this needle set enough. It's worth the money. This is definitely a very pricey needle set. I have the complete 5-inch set here, so it has all of the small needles starting at 2.75 millimeters, and I also have all the large needles too, going up to 10 millimeters. But I just love how the knitting feels with these stainless steel needle tips. I have always been a metal needle preferred knitter, so I can't really compare these to any of the high-end wooden needles like Licca. There is something just really well crafted about these stainless steel tips, and I have used stainless steel needles from other brands like Knitter's Pride, and these just don't compare. These are just so much better with how the texture feels of the yarn on them. Like, they're slippery but also a little bit grippy at the same time, and the nylon coated cords are really nice. They're super smooth. I feel like the join between the needle and the cord is indistinguishable. If you do get the set here, it does come with this miracle little grippy red heart and a set of keys, so you can really tighten the needle with the grippy heart and the key. And so I do this every time I put new needles on, and it really makes the join seamless. It makes the whole knitting experience really nice. And if you don't have the set but you want one of these for any of your other needles, it is sold separately, so I'll put a link for that down below in the description. Lifesaver. If I ever lose this, I need to buy another one immediately. So ChiaoGoo, another win for 2025, and I'm sure it'll be another win for 2026, but just wanted to mention it here. A lot of you guys do ask what my favorite needle set is, so here it is. It will be linked below as well. And that's everything I wanted to share this year as my 2025 hits and misses. It was fun to sort of pull out a select amount of projects to talk about in depth. I will be posting soon my Everything I Knit in 2025 video, so stay tuned for that. That'll be a very quick overview of every single project that I made this year. If you want to follow me on Instagram, you can find me at ne_knits, where I post lots of updates on all of my projects. I did also just join TikTok, which is new to me. Thought I would give it a try, so if you're on TikTok and want to follow me, I'll also put my username down below. Feel free to subscribe to my channel here and hit the notification bell if you want to be notified anytime I post a new video. Thank you guys so much for joining me today, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Bye.